The galaxy had always underestimated humanity. To most alien civilizations, humans were primitive, fragile, and predictable. They had never seen the true extent of human ingenuity or resilience. One such group, the Xintharians, prided themselves on intelligence and advanced technology. They loved to mock other species they considered weak. To them, humans were merely a curiosity, strange creatures with little to offer. Dr. Alara Voss, a human scientist and engineer, did not consider herself extraordinary. She was brilliant in her field, yes, but she had always believed humans' true strength lay not in strength or weapons, but in creativity, courage, and perseverance. She had spent her life exploring dangerous planets, studying alien life forms, and solving complex problems with limited resources. But even she could not imagine the challenge that awaited her. The Xintharians had captured her during a routine scientific mission. They transported her to a distant, uncharted planet, one of the most hostile in known space. When she arrived, her ship had been stripped of advanced navigation systems, shields, and communication devices. The aliens laughed as they dropped her onto the barren, jagged surface. "This will be interesting," one Xintharian official said with amusement. "Humans cannot survive here. Let's see how long she lasts." Alara looked around. The planet was harsh and unwelcoming. Black, jagged rocks stretched as far as she could see. Acidic winds cut through the thin protective layer of her suit. Strange plants with glowing edges swayed in the toxic breeze, and predators, massive and swift, moved silently in the shadows. The Xintharians had meant this as a joke, a test to humiliate humans, but Alara had no intention of failing. Her first thought was simple: survive. Panic would only slow her down. She scanned the area, noting the direction of the wind, the terrain, and the plants. Even in this alien environment, patterns existed, and humans were masters at recognizing patterns and using them to their advantage. The first night was brutal. The temperature dropped drastically, and acidic rain fell intermittently, burning the outer layer of her suit. She huddled behind a jagged rock formation, using her knowledge of physics and natural shelter to stay safe. Using fragments of her ship and pieces of alien debris, she constructed a temporary shelter. It was small, crude, and uncomfortable, but it protected her from the worst of the storm. When morning came, she emerged cautiously. The storm had passed, but the planet's challenges were far from over. She needed food, water, and a way to signal for help. The limited rations in her kit would not last long, and she had no way to communicate with her team across the galaxy. The Xintharians had expected her to give up. Alara began exploring the immediate area. She discovered plants with tough fibers, some of which could be woven into ropes or used for shelter. Others produced edible fruits, though many were poisonous. She tested them carefully, using logic, observation, and trial and error to determine which were safe. Every successful discovery gave her a small sense of hope. Humans thrived on solving problems, and this planet was nothing if not a challenge. Predators were the next concern. She had noticed large, shadowy figures moving between rocks at night. Their glowing eyes reflected the dim light of the planet's twin moons. She could not fight them directly, but she could outsmart them. Using rocks, plant fibers, and her own ingenuity, she constructed simple traps to protect her shelter. She studied the creatures' patterns, learning when they hunted, how they moved, and which paths they took. The Xintharians were watching through their observation screens. Sure, she would fail. "She cannot last a week," one said confidently. No human could endure this environment. But Alara was undeterred. Every day, she improved her shelter, refined her traps, and expanded her knowledge of the planet. She observed weather patterns, noticing subtle changes in wind and clouds that indicated approaching storms. She mapped safe paths through the jagged terrain and identified locations where food and water were more likely to be found. Humans were adaptable, and she was using every bit of knowledge she had accumulated over her career. One day, while exploring a canyon near her shelter, she found an unusual crystal formation. The crystals emitted a soft hum and seemed to interact with electrical energy in strange ways. Curious, she experimented carefully, using small fragments of her ship's remaining equipment. After hours of testing, she discovered that the crystals could conduct and store energy. This small discovery would later become crucial for her survival and communication, though even she did not yet realize it. Time passed slowly, each day presenting new challenges. Storms struck without warning. Acidic rain and high winds battered her shelter. Predators prowled nearby, testing her defenses. Yet, she remained calm, methodical, and focused. Humans, she reflected, were strong not because they were the fastest or the toughest, but because they never surrendered to fear. Her food supply was limited, so she experimented with different strategies. She built small traps for smaller predators, which provided both safety and occasional meals. She learned to gather water from underground streams and collect rainwater, using hollowed-out plant stems and makeshift containers. Each day, she refined her techniques, becoming more skilled and confident. At night, she reflected on Earth, its forests, oceans, and familiar skies. Memories of her home planet strengthened her resolve. Humans had always thrived in difficult conditions, adapting to deserts, mountains, and oceans. Now, on an alien world, she was proving the same principle. Adaptation was humanity's greatest strength. The Xantharians continued to watch, their amusement slowly turning into confusion. One observer noted, "She is learning too quickly. She adapts in ways we did not predict." Others shook their heads, dismissing it as luck, but the cracks in their confidence were growing. Humans were unpredictable. And this human, Dr. Ilara Voss, was proving that point. After several days, she managed to create a functional tool using parts from her ship and the crystals she had found. She fashioned a small device capable of generating weak signals into space. It was rudimentary, barely enough to reach the nearest human vessel, but it was a start. She knew that persistence was key. Humans did not give up easily, and she would continue to improve the device until help arrived. Meanwhile, her interaction with the planet's environment became more sophisticated. She discovered certain plants that could provide insulation, others that could filter water, and rocks that could retain heat for warmth during the cold nights. She used every observation and resource, turning a hostile world into a livable space. The planet that had been intended to destroy her was becoming a place where she could survive and even thrive. Predator encounters became learning experiences rather than threats. She observed, analyzed, and adapted her traps to work more efficiently. Each creature taught her something new: how to anticipate danger, how to stay calm under pressure, and how to use strategy over brute force. Humans, she realized, excelled when they thought logically and acted creatively. By the end of the first month, Ilara's situation had changed dramatically. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into a careful and deliberate plan for long-term endurance. She had food, water, and shelter secured. Her traps protected her from predators. She had discovered a potential energy source and was working to improve her communication device. The Xantharians continued to monitor her, now with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Their intended joke, the test of human weakness, was failing. Instead, they were witnessing a remarkable demonstration of resilience and intelligence. They could not predict what she would do next, and that uncertainty made them uneasy. Ilara, however, did not think of revenge or competition. Her focus was survival and learning. She understood that humans succeeded because they adapted, observed carefully, and refused to give up. Every challenge she overcame strengthened her resolve and expanded her understanding of the planet. One evening, she climbed a rocky ridge near her shelter and looked at the horizon. The twin moons cast a dim glow over the jagged landscape. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Her situation was dangerous, yes, but she was alive, and that meant she still had choices. She had turned what the Xantharians intended as humiliation into an opportunity to demonstrate human capability. She returned to her shelter and worked through the night, repairing her tools and refining her energy experiments. She tested the crystals, improved her traps, and prepared for the next storm. Humans, she thought, were strongest when they faced adversity with logic, creativity, and persistence. She was proving that principle on a planet that had been designed to destroy her. As she rested briefly, she considered the future. She needed to continue improving her transmitter, survive the planet's hazards, and find a way to escape. The Zintharians believed humans were weak, but she knew otherwise. She was proof that humans could overcome impossible odds, and she intended to return to space not broken, but stronger, smarter, and ready for whatever the galaxy might throw at her. The first month on the planet had been a test, and Alara had passed. She had survived storms, predators, and isolation. She had discovered new resources, created tools, and learned to navigate the alien world. The Zintharians had intended a joke, but they were witnessing something far more significant: human brilliance, adaptability, and perseverance. And somewhere across the galaxy, she hoped, the humans who would respond to her signal were preparing. They had no idea what awaited them, or how capable humans could be when challenged to the extreme. Alara lay down that night, staring at the faint light of the twin moons, and smiled. She had survived the impossible, learned from every challenge, and begun the long journey of turning the Zintharians' joke into a triumph for humanity. The planet had tested her in every possible way, but it had also taught her an important lesson. Humans are not easily defeated, no matter how hostile the world. No matter how impossible the challenge, humans adapt, survive, and overcome. And this was only the beginning. The planet's surface was harsh. Jagged rocks tore at the edges of Alara Voss's protective suit, and the acidic winds stung her exposed skin. But she walked steadily, her mind focused. Every step counted. She had one goal: survive. The Zintharians had sent her here as a joke, expecting her to fail. But humans, she thought, were not so easily defeated. The first challenge came within hours. A massive storm swept across the plains, with violent winds strong enough to topple trees and erode the landscape. Alara ducked behind a cluster of rock formations, her eyes scanning for a safer spot. She remembered lessons from old Earth survival guides she had studied as a child. Shelters must be built against the wind, and the ground must be stable. Using fractured rock and thick plant fibers, she began constructing a small enclosure. It was crude, but it would protect her from the worst of the storm. By nightfall, she had a basic shelter. Inside, she examined her supplies. Her kit contained only minimal rations, a few tools, and a compact energy cell. It was hardly enough to last weeks on this alien world, but she reminded herself, humans were inventive. If she could adapt, she could thrive. The next day, she explored the area near her shelter. The planet's flora was dangerous, with sharp-edged leaves and a sticky sap that burned if it touched skin. Still, she examined it carefully, trying to find any use. One plant, in particular, had a fibrous core strong enough to weave into rope. Another had hollow stems, perfect for channeling water from the occasional rainfall. Slowly, she built a network of simple tools and devices, each one an improvement over the last. At night, she faced her first predator. A creature larger than a human, with dark scales and 6 glowing eyes, crept toward her shelter. Alara's heart pounded, but she stayed calm. She remembered an old human principle: observation before action. Watching the creature, she noted its movements. It avoided open spaces and seemed to hunt by scent. Using this knowledge, she fashioned a trap from rocks and plant fibers. The creature triggered it and fell into a pit she had dug, giving her a chance to understand the predator without immediate danger. As days passed, she became more confident. She discovered that certain stones could create sparks when struck together. Using them, she started fires to cook food and signal her presence. She harvested edible plants cautiously, testing each one. She realized that this planet, though hostile, had patterns, and humans were skilled at recognizing patterns. She adapted, learning which plants were safe, how to trap small creatures for food, and how to collect clean water from underground sources. The Xantharians watched through their observation screens, still convinced she would fail. But her methods were clever. When a sudden flood threatened her shelter, she had already built drainage channels to divert the water. When the nights became frigid, she constructed layered insulation using plant fibers and rock. Each time, she solved problems the aliens considered impossible for a human. She also began experimenting with energy. The planet had strange crystalline structures that hummed with power when touched. Elara, with her scientific background, studied them carefully. By connecting several crystals with metal wiring scavenged from old equipment, she managed to create a rudimentary energy source. It was not much, but enough to power small devices. This discovery would later prove crucial, though even she did not know it yet. Communication was her next challenge. Her transmitter had been damaged when she landed. Without contact, rescue seemed impossible. But she refused to give up. Using her knowledge of electromagnetic signals and her improvised energy source, she constructed a new transmitter. She tested it cautiously, sending weak signals into space. At first, nothing happened. But humans had always been persistent. She adjusted frequencies, experimented with signal strength, and finally managed to send a brief pulse into the void. Somewhere, she hoped, a human vessel might detect it. Days turned into weeks. Elara grew stronger, more resourceful, and more confident. She walked longer distances, mapping the planet and learning its dangers. She created traps for predators, shelters for storms, and tools for gathering resources efficiently. Every challenge the planet threw at her, she met with calm determination. One evening, she noticed the sky change. The planet's twin moons aligned, casting strange shadows across the landscape. She realized that the shifting light could help her track creatures and predict weather patterns. She began using shadows to guide her movements, avoiding dangerous zones and finding resources faster. Even the Xantharians began to notice. Some of the younger observers whispered, "She's learning, faster than she should. Is this normal for a human?" Others dismissed it, but the doubt had begun. Elara also found moments of quiet reflection. At night, she would sit near her small fire and look at the stars. Memories of Earth gave her strength, the green forests, the vast oceans, the laughter of friends. Humans were not just clever. They were resilient, adaptable, and driven by hope. That hope gave her an edge that no alien technology could predict. One day, while exploring a cavern system near her shelter, she discovered a mineral that amplified the signals from her transmitter. Carefully, she mined small pieces and integrated them into her device. The transmitter now sent a signal much farther than before. It was weak, but it was enough. Somewhere, a human ship could detect it. The Xantharians, still observing, began to show unease. Their joke had been intended to humiliate, but Elara's progress was undeniable. She had adapted, learned, and used the planet's resources in ways they had not imagined. Her ingenuity was a challenge to their assumptions, and they could not predict what she would do next. By the end of the second week, Elara had transformed her environment. She had built a small network of shelters connected by safe paths. She had food sources secured, predators managed, and even a simple warning system for incoming storms. Every day, she improved her tools and technology, proving that humans could turn even the harshest world into a livable one. She paused one evening, looking at the sky as the twin moons rose. The faint pulse from her transmitter hummed, sending a message across the galaxy. Humanity was still here, still clever, and still unstoppable. The Xantharians had intended to make a joke, but Elara had turned it into a demonstration of human brilliance. Even alone, on a planet that should have destroyed her, she smiled. The joke was on them, and soon, the universe would see just how resilient humans could be. Elara Voss stood on the rocky outcrop of her shelter, staring at the faint pulse of her transmitter. Somewhere across the vast galaxy, a human ship had received her signal. She could feel it in her bones. Rescue was coming. But Elara knew this journey was far from over. The Xantharians had sent her as a joke, a challenge meant to show human weakness. Now, she would return not as a victim, but as proof that humans could adapt, survive, and overcome the impossible. The approach of the human vessel was slow at first. She watched the sky carefully, calculating the ship's trajectory and the safest path for departure. The planet was unpredictable, with sudden storms, jagged cliffs, and predators that had learned to follow her scent. But Alara had learned to predict patterns here, and her mind worked like a machine, analyzing every risk. When the ship finally landed, it was sleek and unfamiliar, bristling with sensors and antennas. She ran toward it, but she did not rush blindly. The surrounding terrain had taught her patience. Using narrow paths and natural cover, she reached the landing site without alerting the predators that still prowled the area. Her rescue crew waited anxiously. "Dr. Voss," one of them called, their voice crackling over the comlink. Alara smiled briefly. "I'm here," she said, her tone calm, almost too calm. "But we need to move carefully. The planet is not done testing us yet." As she boarded the ship, she immediately noticed the gaps in their security protocols. The Zintharians had designed the planet with observation in mind. But humans had a different approach. Alara examined the ship's sensors, comparing them to the planet's natural energy fields. If the Zintharians detected the ship too soon, they could intercept it. She had a plan. Using small energy crystals she had harvested, she modified the ship's shielding system. The crystals absorbed certain frequencies, masking their presence from alien sensors. It was a risky move, but Alara had nothing to lose. The ship lifted off just as a sudden storm surged across the landing site, hiding their departure behind torrents of wind and lightning. The first obstacle came almost immediately. An asteroid belt lay between the planet and open space, the dense rocks moving unpredictably. The Zintharians had stationed a patrol near the edge of the system, waiting to intercept anyone who tried to leave. The crew relied on automated navigation, but Alara intervened. She used her knowledge of gravitational shifts and momentum, calculating a path the autopilot would never attempt. "Captain," she said calmly, pointing to a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. "We can make it through here if we adjust thrust manually." The captain hesitated. "Are you sure?" Alara's gaze was steady. "Trust me. Humans find solutions where others see none." With careful timing and precise calculations, they navigated the belt. Rocks scraped the hull, and alarms blared. But Alara's plan worked. The ship emerged unscathed into open space, but the Zintharians were not idle. A squadron of sleek patrol ships appeared, glowing with energy weapons. They had not expected her to survive, much less escape so quickly. "They don't know what humans are capable of," Alara muttered to herself. The human crew readied for battle, but Alara had a better idea. She had observed the patrol ship's movement patterns and weapon cycles. Using her understanding of timing and physics, she guided the crew to weave through the squadron's formation, using asteroid shadows and energy fluctuations as cover. One by one, the patrol ships were confused, unable to predict the humans' unpredictable maneuvers. "Impressive," the captain said quietly. "I've never seen anyone move like that." Alara smiled faintly. "Humans are not predictable. That's why we survive." Hours passed as they navigated deeper into space. The Zintharians attempted another interception near a gravitational anomaly. Alara studied the anomaly carefully. Its swirling energy could destroy ships if miscalculated, but humans had always been innovators. She calculated a precise trajectory, using the anomaly's energy to slingshot the ship forward, increasing speed while avoiding detection. The maneuver was risky, but it worked perfectly. The Zintharian sensors could not keep up. During the journey, Alara also began repairing the transmitter she had improvised on the planet. Using spare parts from the ship and the energy crystals, she strengthened the signal. Soon, she was broadcasting not only her location but also a detailed report of the planet's resources and hazards. It was a small act of defiance, but also a gift to humanity. The galaxy needed to know what humans were capable of even in the harshest environments. The crew began to see the truth. Alara was more than a scientist. She was a strategist, a survivor, and a symbol of human ingenuity. Every decision she made, every calculation, was precise and unflappable. Even under pressure, she remained calm, thinking 5 steps ahead of the aliens who had tried to make her a joke. As they neared a safe distance from the planet, the Xantharians made one final attempt to stop them. A massive energy beam sliced through space, forcing the humans into evasive maneuvers. But Alara had anticipated this. Using a combination of shields, energy redirection, and carefully timed thruster burns, she guided the ship through the attack without sustaining damage. The Xantharians were stunned. They had underestimated human creativity and adaptability. Their joke, intended to humiliate, had become a demonstration of human brilliance. During the journey, Alara also shared her observations with the crew. She explained how patterns in the planet's storms, predator behavior, and energy fields could be used to predict future dangers. Her methods were simple, relying on observation, logic, and improvisation, but they were effective. The crew marveled at her insight. By the time they reached open space far beyond the planet's system, the ship was quiet. Tension replaced with admiration. Alara leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. She had survived, adapted, and led the ship through dangers that even advanced technology might not overcome without human intuition. "Dr. Voss," the captain said, his voice filled with respect. "You've done more than survive. You've shown us what humans are truly capable of." Alara smiled. "We survive because we never give up. We adapt because we have to. And we win because we refuse to be predictable." The crew laughed softly, the sound a relief after weeks of tension. Outside, stars stretched infinitely, silent witnesses to the human ship's journey. Somewhere, the Xantharians were watching, shocked that their joke had backfired so spectacularly. Alara knew the journey home was only the beginning. Humanity would learn from this, grow stronger, and be prepared for the challenges ahead. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. She had taken what the aliens intended as a humiliation and turned it into a victory. As the ship accelerated toward the nearest human colony, Alara looked back at the distant planet. It had tested her in every way possible. She had learned, adapted, and turned adversity into strength, and she knew this was what made humans different. No matter how cruel the joke, no matter how impossible the challenge, humans always found a way to survive and to astonish those who doubted them. The stars streaked past, each one a reminder of the vast universe waiting to be explored. And somewhere, far beyond the reaches of known space, the Xantharians were reconsidering everything they thought they knew about humans. Alara smiled, quietly confident. Their assumptions had been wrong. Humanity's story was just beginning, and this journey was only the first chapter. The human ship sliced through the darkness of space, leaving the hostile planet and the Xantharians far behind. Alara Voss stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. She had survived a world that should have broken her, navigated deadly obstacles, and outsmarted alien forces that had laughed at her existence. Now, she was returning home not just as a survivor, but as proof of human resilience, ingenuity, and determination. The crew moved quietly around her, some still recovering from the tension of the journey. Even the captain, who had flown countless missions, looked at her with awe. "Dr. Voss," he said softly, "you've done more than any human before. You've turned what the aliens thought was a joke into a demonstration of everything humanity can achieve." Alara nodded, a faint smile on her face. "We never give up," she said simply. "We adapt. And we always find a way." As the ship approached human-controlled space, communication channels lit up. The colony governments, exploration fleets, and research stations all scrambled to understand the signals coming from her transmitter. They had received fragments of data over the past weeks, mysterious pulses from a distant system. Now, as the ship emerged from uncharted space, the pieces fell into place. On the bridge, the crew activated the ship's broadcast system. Alara spoke into the comlink, her voice calm, but filled with authority. "This is Dr. Alara Voss. I am returning from planet X-79. It was a hostile environment, but it has been studied and survived. Humanity has adapted, learned, and overcome every challenge it faced. This is proof that humans are resilient, intelligent, and resourceful. We are ready for any challenge the galaxy may present. The message spread like wildfire. Across systems, humans cheered. Colonies celebrated. Scientists marveled at her discoveries. And the Zintharians were silent. In their observation stations, senior Zintharian officials watched the feed with growing disbelief. Their intended joke, meant to humiliate humanity, had spectacularly backfired. A single human had survived their impossible world, escaped their patrols, and returned to deliver a message of triumph. It was clear now. Humans were not to be underestimated. Alara's return ship glided into the orbit of the nearest human colony. A crowd had gathered: scientists, military personnel, explorers, and civilians alike. They watched as she emerged, stepping from the ship with a calm confidence that commanded attention. The colony governor approached her first. "Dr. Voss," he said, struggling to contain his amazement. "We heard rumors of your journey, but seeing you return, it's beyond what we imagined." Alara shook her head. "It was not just about me. It was about what humans can do. Every problem has a solution if you observe, adapt, and never give up. That's what makes us strong." The crowd listened intently as she recounted her survival. She described the hostile weather, the predatory creatures, the toxic plants, and the harsh terrain. She spoke of the tools she had created, the shelters she had built, and the strategies she had used to survive and signal for help. Her words were simple but powerful, and every listener understood the magnitude of her achievements. Among the crowd, young scientists whispered to one another, "She turned impossible into possible. No human has ever survived like that. We underestimated ourselves. And now, everyone else will too." Alara also shared her discoveries from the planet. Unusual minerals, energy patterns, and methods for surviving extreme environments. These findings would revolutionize human exploration, giving them knowledge that could save lives and expand humanity's reach across the stars. Meanwhile, the Zintharians convened in their council chambers. Their faces, normally composed and proud, showed confusion and unease. A joke had turned into a revelation. Humans were far more capable than they had believed. One senior Zintharian, who had doubted Alara's abilities from the beginning, spoke aloud. "We underestimated them. Entirely. A single human survived the impossible." The council murmured, a mixture of disbelief and respect. They had assumed humans were weak, predictable, and fragile. But Alara had proven otherwise. Her journey, her intelligence, and her calm under pressure shattered every preconception. Back on the colony, celebrations continued. Alara did not seek attention or accolades. Her focus was on preparing humanity for the challenges ahead. She worked with scientists to catalog the planet's resources, with engineers to develop new survival tools, and with strategists to create methods for future exploration missions. She knew that the galaxy would continue to test humanity, and she wanted humans to be ready. The media across systems captured every detail of her journey. Stories spread of her clever traps, her energy experiments, and her precise navigation through asteroid belts and gravitational anomalies. The phrase, "humans are unpredictable," became common among explorers and diplomats alike. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's strength was not just in technology, but in the human mind, the ability to adapt, innovate, and persevere. Even the youngest Zintharians could not hide their admiration. Some whispered privately, "If a single human can do this, what could a fleet accomplish?" Others, more cautious, warned their superiors to reconsider any future plans involving humans. The joke had failed spectacularly, and in its place was a new respect for a species they had dismissed for centuries. Alara, however, remained humble. She often returned to the observatory overlooking the stars, reflecting on her journey. The hostile planet had been a challenge, but it had also been a teacher. She had learned patience, observation, and the importance of using every resource wisely. She had seen firsthand what humans were capable of, and she knew that her story would inspire generations to come. One evening, as she watched the twin moons of the colony rise in the sky, she received a message from the Xantharians themselves. It was formal, carefully worded, and filled with an unusual tone of respect. They requested a meeting, an audience with humanity. Ilara shared the message with the colony leaders. "They want to talk," she said. "Not as masters, but as equals." They finally realized what humans can do. The colony erupted in excitement. Diplomats prepared their speeches, scientists prepared demonstrations, and strategists analyzed what this could mean for future interactions. Humanity, for the first time in galactic history, was recognized not just as survivors, but as a species worthy of respect and caution. Ilara's journey had started as a cruel joke, a test meant to humiliate her, but it had ended as a demonstration of human excellence. One human, alone on a hostile planet, had turned despair into triumph. She had proven that human intelligence, courage, and resilience could overcome any obstacle. As the first human delegation prepared to meet the Xantharian Council, Ilara reflected on her experiences. The galaxy had doubted humanity, underestimated its strength, and expected failure. But humans were unpredictable. They adapted, they persevered, and they always found a way. The galaxy would remember this moment for centuries. The day a human survived the impossible, returned, and stunned everyone, including the aliens who had tried to mock her. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a warning and an inspiration, and a story that would inspire humans and aliens alike. Ilara smiled, quietly confident. The joke had ended, but humanity's story was just beginning. The universe had been stunned, and the galaxy would never underestimate humans again.